Welcome to Famiora Vision. Look closely at the couple next to you, or perhaps look inward at your own partnership. There's a psychological time bomb ticking in many stable marriages, often centered around a woman's 40th birthday. It's a shift so profound, it can transform a reliable, devoted partner into a stranger, leaving the spouse completely blindsided and asking, what happened? She was the anchor, organizing the family, building the future. Now, she's scrolling dating apps, dressing for external eyes, and craving the validation of a fleeting glance from a stranger more than years of your steady devotion. This isn't a story about betrayal. It's a deep dive into the collision of biology, cultural pressure, and the terrifying fear of invisibility that haunts many women in their midlife. For 2 decades, society told her beauty equaled value. Now, as natural changes begin, that identity feels annihilated. This isn't just about feeling different. It's a neurochemical crisis where the predictability of a committed relationship no longer delivers the dopamine hit that novelty does. If you want to understand the unseen forces that can dismantle a marriage, the subtle warning signs you might have missed for years, and why the man at the coffee counter can feel more compelling than the man she built a life with, then stay tuned. This video is a raw, pattern-based analysis designed to give you clarity and context. Before we pull back the curtain on this hidden crisis, please take a second to hit that like button, subscribe to Famiora Vision, and ring the notification bell. Your support ensures we can keep delivering these vital, uncompromising truths. Let's begin this essential examination. The transition is rarely sudden. It's an invisible earthquake. One moment, the partner you relied on, the one who managed the family logistics, maintained the household rhythm, and invested deeply in your shared future, is present. The next, a shadow version emerges, seeking external validation, cultivating new, often incongruous interests, and exhibiting a restlessness that destabilizes everything. This transformation, often centered between the ages of 35 and 45, is frequently misinterpreted as mere boredom or character flaw, when in reality, it stems from a complex psychological and neurochemical shift. For men in long-term relationships, the assumption of permanence acts as a dangerous shield. After a decade or more together, after navigating the choppy waters of raising children and constructing a shared domestic existence, it's easy to believe your relationship is somehow immune to the midlife struggles observed in others. This certainty is often the source of the shock. While men may experience their own form of midlife crisis, often involving reclaiming youth through material pursuits or activities, the female experience is frequently centered on identity and external relevance. Many women in this age bracket face a significant reevaluation of their self-worth, driven by cultural programming that has historically tied their value too tightly to physical attractiveness and desirability. Society often indoctrinates women from a young age with a problematic, insidious equation. Beauty equals value. Be attractive, be desirable, be wanted.
You're better off this way.
This messaging is relentless, beginning in adolescence and continuing through their prime years. For roughly 2 decades, from 15 to 35, this framework provides a certain kind of power and attention. Men pursue her. Praise is abundant. She feels significant in a very specific, culturally reinforced way. But biology is impartial to cultural demands. As women approach their late 30s and early 40s, biological realities begin to surface, and the face that once commanded automatic attention may now generate less response. The physique that was once effortlessly pursued requires intense maintenance, or it simply changes. For the woman whose identity framework was heavily constructed on this foundation of external physical appeal, this shift can feel like a devastating psychological event, an identity annihilation. When a self-concept is tethered primarily to being desired by others, the natural fading of that intense, indiscriminate attention can feel like losing one's entire self. To understand the depth of this crisis, consider a parallel. Imagine an individual whose entire self-worth revolves around a single, exceptional professional skill. They are still highly competent, but their peak performance window closes or the industry changes. For those who define themselves solely by that peak capability, the crisis is not about competence. It's about existential relevance. Instead of navigating this natural progression with acceptance and shifting focus to deeper, character-based values, some women panic. They resist biological reality intensely, viewing their own aging as a war against time itself. And frequently, the marriage becomes collateral damage in this battle. The shift in the reward system is critical here. When a 22-year-old receives a compliment on her appearance, it may be routine. When a 42-year-old receives the same compliment, especially if she has been feeling emotionally invisible or physically overlooked, the neurological response is vastly different. Her brain floods with dopamine and norepinephrine, a potent cocktail that confirms she is still relevant and still desirable. That single dose of validation from a stranger, who has no obligation to provide it, can register as far more powerful than years of steady, obligated commitment from a husband. The husband's devotion feels like a given, a consequence of marriage and shared history. The stranger's attention feels like a genuine, unconstrained choice. This dynamic creates a profound vulnerability. Married women past 40 can become intensely susceptible to outside attention, not necessarily due to a deficit of integrity, but because they are craving a neurochemical and emotional experience that a long-term, predictable relationship simply cannot deliver with the same intensity. The electricity of being chosen anew by someone who is completely free to walk away confirms her value in a way that the husband's familiar presence cannot. Your daily attention may not register the same way precisely because you are committed. You are family. You are the known quantity. The man at the gym, the colleague at the coffee counter, their smiles and glances are seen as pure, unobligated validation. That feeling confirms she is still attractive to the world outside her established domestic context. Once this validation hits, the memory of being pursued and desired by someone new becomes a potent psychological force, difficult to ignore, and the internal shift has begun. This psychological shift often manifests through a subtle, yet telling, regression. One of the clearest indicators that a marriage is entering dangerous territory is when a woman begins to discuss her past with an unusual, almost romantic fondness. Ex-boyfriends, once relegated to the archives of "that was then," reappear in conversation, imbued with a nostalgia that lacks closure. Stories from her single years, previously shared with a sense of relief or even mild embarrassment, now emerge with a wistful, almost longing quality. This dwelling on what was rather than what is can signal deep internal shifts, a yearning for a past identity that felt more vibrant, more desired, and less burdened by current realities. It's an unconscious attempt to reclaim a feeling, an era, when her value felt undeniably high. An essential, often overlooked biological reality further complicates this landscape. The brain's reward systems change dramatically over time. The neurochemical responses that once delivered intense pleasure and emotional resonance from small gestures at age 25 function differently by age 45. The dopamine pathways, once easily stimulated, may now require much stronger, novel stimulation to achieve the same emotional impact. This isn't a judgment, it's a biological fact. A thoughtful romantic dinner, a carefully planned weekend escape, or intimate moments refined over years, all the familiar expressions of love that once deeply resonated may now be processed differently by her brain. The neurological spark that defined early relationship excitement can diminish, leaving a void where familiar affections once landed with profound emotional weight. This neurobiological recalibration helps explain why some of the most unexpected relationship endings occur after 35. It's not necessarily that people have become malicious or uncaring, but rather that some individuals are struggling with these internal changes. They grapple with a diminished capacity to feel alive in the same ways, to feel significant, or to reconcile their shifting identity with their current reality. The same person who found deep contentment in simple connection at 20 might now require dramatically different experiences at 40 to feel truly engaged and valued. Someone who maintained unwavering loyalty for 15 years might suddenly find themselves capable of choices they never imagined. Driven by these powerful, often confusing internal struggles they may not even fully comprehend. I have witnessed this pattern unfold repeatedly. The dedicated mother and seemingly content partner who unexpectedly detonates her life for someone new. The bewildered spouse almost always utters the same phrase, "I never saw it coming." But were the signs truly absent? Were they not there in the self-critical glances in the mirror, the subtle shift in how she responded to attention from others, the increasing emotional distance despite physical presence? The indicators often exist, quiet and understated, but glaringly obvious in hindsight. The initial phase often involves this intense nostalgia, romanticizing the past, recounting wild years with a newfound enthusiasm. Old photographs might resurface, and stories about former relationships subtly shift from regret or simple anecdote to fond, almost longing memories. This suggests a mind dwelling more in a romanticized past than in the present reality of the marriage. This phase is often followed by the emergence of new friendships, particularly with recently divorced individuals who champion their journey of self-discovery. These friends, often unintentionally, can become powerful influencers, subtly encouraging dissatisfaction. Gatherings can devolve into grievance sessions, where marital challenges are compared, and a stable, predictable marriage is reframed as limiting or even oppressive through this new lens. Social media then intensifies this insidious process. Hours spent scrolling through curated, idealized lives, comparing her authentic, imperfect reality to everyone else's highlight reels, create fertile ground for discontent. Algorithms, meticulously designed to learn and exploit anxieties, begin to serve up targeted content, transformation stories, narratives of starting over, tales of passionate romance after 40. Every scroll becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, confirming what an anxious mind desperately wants to believe, that other, potentially better options exist, and true happiness is just one dramatic decision away. Physical changes often accompany these psychological shifts. It typically begins with increased focus on maintenance, new skincare routines, frequent hair treatments, or even cosmetic procedures previously dismissed as superficial. This can escalate into drastic diets, an almost obsessive focus on intense exercise, and clothing choices that seem less about personal style and more about a desperate attempt to appear significantly younger. Beneath the surface lies a palpable desperation, less about health and more about a relentless fight against the passage of time. Finally, behavioral shifts become undeniable. A sudden, intense need for more space or me time emerges, often coupled with new, time-consuming commitments. The emotional atmosphere shifts, often oscillating between increased, inexplicable conflict, perhaps a subconscious effort to build a case for leaving, or an unusual, almost unsettling pleasantness, which can sometimes signal guilt management. These are the red flags, waving vigorously, though often ignored until it's too late. What makes this midlife crisis exponentially harder to navigate is the unfortunate fact that certain dominant cultural messages actively encourage these destructive impulses. The modern narrative often tells women that they deserve happiness, that they need to discover themselves, and that they should never settle. While these sentiments often stem from good intentions, they frequently validate and fuel internal panic rather than encourage the hard work of commitment, resilience, and working through challenges. The emphasis shifts dangerously toward feelings over commitments, personal happiness over family stability, and instant desires over long-term consequences. Few voices in the public square offer the necessary counter-narrative, that physical appearance changes for everyone, that the relentless pursuit of attention is an ultimately unsatisfying, shallow endeavor, and that building something lasting and meaningful matters infinitely more than chasing a fleeting moment of intensity. Rarely is it explained that the excitement one feels with a new person is often just a cocktail of brain chemistry and anxiety, the butterflies.
Of course you say
and that
nice
passion
things.
without foundation is merely novelty destined to fade. Instead, the modern concept of empowerment can ironically feed the very crisis it purports to solve. The mantras,
Forcing the connection.
live your
It's
truth,
exhausting you.
follow your heart, while sounding liberating, become dangerous justifications for acting on primal, fear-driven impulses. Following these impulses at 40 can be just as potentially destructive as a teenager following theirs. Both are often driven more by biological
saying.
urges,
worry about
neurochemical
him.
cravings, and fear than by genuine wisdom or rational self-interest. The loyal, supportive
Other
partner
options exist.
is then put in an impossible bind, expected to understand, be supportive, give space, and constantly improve yourself. But self-improvement on the husband's part
This isn't a
rarely
workout, it's
addresses the core issue, because the
5 points for
challenge
no one,
isn't
my
truly
love. I
about
must
him
fight.
being better or adequate. It's about the neurological reality that predictability, stability, and long-term commitment do not create the intense dopamine response that novelty and risk do. He is the foundation.
The toilet seat,
She is
the laundry,
craving
the
the
grismated
earthquake.
sock. It's
The
an
influence of a friend
insurmountable
group,
beast
particularly divorced friends, is another critical factor. The divorced friends, consciously or not, require validation for their own life-altering choices. Phrases like, "you deserve better," and "life's too short," become commonplace. When a person spends increasing time in this environment, normal marital challenges, the inevitable friction of shared life, are suddenly reframed. Routines become oppression. Shared responsibilities are recategorized as sacrifices. The stable marriage begins to look like a prison through the lens of those who have already escaped. Reasonable expectations from a partner can be reinterpreted as unreasonable demands, and years of unwavering support can be recontextualized as suppression. Social media continues its relentless amplification. She isn't comparing her marriage to the real complicated marriages of her peers. She's comparing the tedious, often unglamorous reality of her life to digital fantasies, filtered photos, and perfectly curated one-sided narratives. The algorithm acts as a problematic, targeted echo chamber, feeding exactly what an anxious mind wants to hear. That leaving is brave, that staying is settling, and that true happiness is just one dramatic, selfish decision away. What is usually omitted from these narratives is the grueling aftermath. 6 months later, when the new relationship exposes normal human flaws, the exhaustion of starting over at 40, the holidays spent alone because the children stayed with their father, the painful realization that deep, generational connection was traded for a shallow, temporary dose of attention, and real partnership exchanged for fleeting excitement. Furthermore, men and women often process the psychology of aging in vastly different ways, largely due to these contrasting cultural messages. When men reach 40, the cultural narrative often suggests they are entering their prime, distinguished, experienced, and established. Their value on the dating market may even increase. This framework allows men to face aging with a greater sense of confidence. Women, however, often receive the opposite message, that they are past their prime or becoming invisible. Every birthday after 35 can feel like a psychological loss. While men are told they improve with age, women are often told their window is closing. This difference matters immensely. A 45-year-old man typically retains confidence in his attractiveness, often enough that he doesn't need to act drastically on it. This is not about fairness, but about recognizing the profoundly different psychological frameworks imposed by society and biology, and how those frameworks drive behavior. After the dust settles, a predictable psychological mechanism often takes over: historical revisionism. The leaving partner frequently rewrites the entire history of the marriage, retroactively painting the relationship as irrevocably terrible. We were never truly happy, or I was pretending for years. Every positive memory is recontextualized, and minor disagreements are exaggerated into narratives of emotional abuse or suppression. This narrative serves a vital defensive purpose. Painting the former spouse as the villain justifies the destruction because admitting one destroyed something genuinely decent purely for a fleeting neurochemical feeling is psychologically impossible to bear. The collateral damage, heartbreakingly, is often the children. The parent who leaves tells themselves the children will understand, will adjust, and will ultimately want their parent to be
Why can't I just say it?
But children universally prioritize stability and the presence of both parents over a parent's self-actualization. For a child, the realization that a parent's midlife need for external validation outweighed their need for family security creates a deep, lasting impact. The emotional processing often requires professional intervention as they grapple with the concept that a parent's emotional needs superseded their own foundational security. The timing of this crisis is rarely accidental. It often hits when life should be easing, when the children require less constant care, and there is finally time to breathe and reflect.
You're amazing.
This newfound space allows time to scroll social media, time to compare, and critically, time to remember the person they were before marriage and parenting consumed their identity. That remembered person, young, desired, full of possibility, stands in stark contrast to the current, ordinary reality of being a spouse and parent. The painful gap between a romanticized memory and current reality is where fantasy thrives, struggling to compete with a real partner, a real life, and the inevitable reality of aging. The most vulnerable moment occurs when general attention crystallizes into attention from a specific person, a coworker, an old flame reaching out online, or a trainer. The specific person is less important than what they represent. Fantasies now have a face. The thought shifts from the abstract, I could have options, to the tangible, he could be an option. Once this cognitive shift occurs, the partner often becomes fiercely protective of their phone and offers sudden, unsolicited explanations for their time or movements. Conflict may increase as a pre-exit strategy, or they may become unusually pleasant to manage internal guilt. For the partner who remains, understanding the psychology provides a necessary shield. A partner's leaving may not be an indictment of your failure. It is often an indicator of their struggle to accept biological reality, mortality, and changed identity. They are not necessarily running towards something better, but running from something inevitable, the passage of time. You, the loyal, steadfast partner who chose them when they were at their peak, and who remained committed as they navigated change, become a representation of the very thing they are trying to escape, predictable reality. While society may celebrate their departure as brave or authentic, it rarely discusses the partner left trying to explain the fractured family structure to the children and the comprehensive emotional and financial cost of impulsive midlife decisions. Recognizing these patterns early, obsessive focus on youth, dwelling on the past, intense need for external validation, and resentment of responsibility, offers the only opportunity for awareness and self-protection.